we as humans, we create our own reality. We hallucinate reality. Okay, we project reality. So reality is just the collective consciousness. Whatever we believe to reality to be, it is. All right. So what power is the capacity to direct and focus our attention. And before, for the longest time, the best and easiest way to focus our attention was money, right? So wealth isn't money. Money is a tool to extract and store wealth. What wealth is our attention, our consciousness. Okay, so think of the idea of craftsmanship. What is craftsmanship? Craftsmanship just means that, like, if you don't pay any attention when you're making a vase, the vase is going to be ugly and no one's going to want to buy it. But if you put your heart and soul into pottery and creating a beautiful vase, then everyone's going to buy it because it's a work of art, right? And when you do that, you create wealth for the world. And so before, money was a great way to motivate and incentivize people to focus on their work, which creates wealth. Unfortunately, we conflated wealth with money, which leads to a lot of problems. Okay, and that was fine for the longest time. The problem with money, of course, is that it's really nothing. It's easily generated. So money is just created out of thin air, right? So any bank can issue a loan, and that qualifies as money. And so, but over time, when you have this system of fiat currency, you have too much money production. There's just too much money floating around. And so what happens is, if you're a parent, you have like $2 million in the bank, you want your kid to be happy, right? So you basically tell your kid, don't worry too much. If you fell in life, I'll give you $2 million, right? And so the kids are like, okay, then why do I have to work? And so you go to work, or you don't really like to work, you quit and you go to another job, okay? And that's what's led to the economy we have today. So the problem that in our world, people don't recognize is that there's too much wealth and money floating around. There's just too much.
Yeah.
And so you need to destroy this wealth through war. Okay. Now the question then is, okay, how then do you capture people's attention? How do you focus people's attention? Well, you can do it through AI. Yeah. So that's how you control people's attention. And to control society, you can have tokens, right? So rather than money, you can have tokens where you do the work and you give them these tokens, and then your tokens can then upgrade your AI. So as though, your AI is your lover and you're working for your AI, right? And quite honestly, this system is going to work. What it is techno-Marxism. That's the world we're going into.
That's pretty scary. You've also talked about transhumanism and how that relates to the rich and the common people, right? I mean, it's really about the advancement of human conditions by way of technological innovation, but it's just going to splice up humanity, because the guys that are at the top 1%, they're going to be thinking about living until they're 150 to 250 years old. Whereas the guys at the middle and the bottom, they can only think about using ChatGPT or Gemini 3 for getting answers faster than before, right? It's just going to further divide.
Yeah, so we are heading towards this world where, as you say, the elite have access to transhumanist technology. So they are more healthy, they're more beautiful, and they live longer, right? And that's something that Jeffrey Epstein was actually working on a lot, because, as you can imagine, that's the obsession of the global elite. Like, where do they put all their money in science? Longevity research. And then everyone else is going to be a slave, essentially, to this system where you're microchipped, and there are drugs that can modulate your behavior. So think of Brave New World, where they divide the world into different classes, like the alphas, the betas, the deltas, and that's the world we're living in. We'll go into, where, depending on your class, your behavior will be modified in a certain way. So, like, it's possible you can never get angry. You can't never get angry. You can never rebel, right? You can never think for yourself, but you'll always be happy, right? So the phrase, of course, is you'll own nothing and be happy. I think the Board of Peace, it's meant to replace the UN Security Council, right? So given the war in Iran, the world is going to fracture, right? And so there's going to be some major trends that emerge very quickly because of this war. The first major trend is deindustrialization. There's no way around it, right? Because before, the entire world was dependent on cheap energy, right? Oil is the basis for all, for the entire economy, right? So once you lose access to cheap oil, then you can only deindustrialize. You can no longer do AI. You can't do electrical vehicles. You don't have the oil resources to do that. Okay, so the world has to deindustrialize. That's point number one. Point number two is that the world has to practice now. Nations and states have to practice mercantilism. Okay, they basically have to become self-sufficient, and they have to create their own supply lines. One of the nations that has this most pressing need, of course, is Japan. Japan is one of those technologically advanced nations in the world. It's very wealthy, but it doesn't have independent global supply chains. You know, if the United States were to cut off Japan from the American system, Japan starves to death. So, you know, I think one of the major missions for Prime Minister Takahashi is to create a mercantile supply system. And this goes back, of course, to the 20th century, the Japanese coal prosperity sphere, right? So it's gonna have to go into Southeast Asia and try to colonize as many territory as it can. Okay, so that's not a pretty sight. Okay, so mercantilism. And then the third, of course, is this war over resources. So basically over water, basically. So as current geophysical trends continue, many nations in the world, especially in the Middle East, India, Pakistan, they're going to face some water shortages. So I think these are the three big trends that we have to anticipate because of this war in the Middle East.
Wow. Now, draw the picture for a post Gog and Magog world. Is the Pax Judaica world cast in stone, or
so I
will
think
it still be? Yeah.
So I think Pax Judaica is pretty set. They've been planning this for like decades. Okay, and this plan goes back centuries. And these are the most powerful people in the world, so they don't really care what we think. They don't really care if we know their plans. They're just going to implement it. All the pieces are in place for Pax Judaica. And so you have Pax Judaica, where Israel becomes this hub of global finance, global trade, global technology. And you're like, well, Israel doesn't have that many people. Well, guess what? They can import the labor from India, right? They can import tens of millions of people to work as laborers in this Pax Judaica. And so why is it before the war, Maldi visited Jerusalem and signed all these wonderful agreements with Israel? Because what Israel wants is access to the cheap labor of India, right? And that makes sense for India because remember how China became wealthy is by exporting cheap labor overseas, right? It had an abundance of cheap labor, and then it took people from the fields, put them in the factories, and that's how China became wealthy. Now, India, because of political issues, because of logistic issues, cannot actually replicate the Chinese miracle. But what it can do is export its people overseas to become wealthy, okay? And that's what it's doing in Canada. That's what and that's what it will do with Israel, okay? So that's a plan. So Indians, Chinese, and Filipinos will become the laborers of Pax Judaica. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to create the conditions for a world war between Israel and Gog and Magog, okay? And the biggest question is like, who is Gog and Magog? And again, we're not clear, okay? But the most likely candidates, if you just know scripture and if you've been following this eschatological debate, the most likely candidates are Russia and Persia, okay? So think about this, where Russia is winning this war in Ukraine and it's now going to become a superpower. And then Iran, even though it will lose against America, it will be able to rebuild itself as a much stronger nation. And eventually, Russia and Persia will feel threatened by Israel, and this will lead to the war of Gog and Magog. So that, I think, is the general gist. But again, I mean, the thing about eschatology is that it's never that specific. It's never that detailed. It's a general framework, okay? So there will be a world war, the final war, and possibly a nuclear war. But who Gog and Magog is up for debate. Look, there are others who suggest that Gog and Magog is actually metaphorical, right? But I think these people take it literally. And I think if you take it literally, then it would be Russia and Persia. Look, I mean, the thing that's most important is to pay attention. Because the reality is that this new generation does not pay attention. Even in school, they don't pay attention. I know because I'm a high school teacher, and they are distracted. Their minds are somewhere else, okay? They're on social media. They're constantly distracted. They're either distracted or they're depressed, okay? So, the amount of medication prescribed to young children nowadays is just absurd in America, right? These SSRIs. It's just absurd. What are you doing? You're frying their brains, really. That's what these drugs do. They actually destroy your capacity to think for yourself. It just leaves you numb and indifferent. Okay? But that's what they want. They want a numb and indifferent population that they can enslave, that they can rule over, who are complacent, who are complicit. Okay? The most important word nowadays that you're taught is to be complicit. Sorry, not complicit. Compliant. Okay? To be compliant.
Compliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And what they want is compliancy. Like, no, I want to actually look at things fundamentally. I want to look at things broadly. I want to look at things as they are, as opposed to as to how they should be, and really try to get into the essence of truth. One thing I've learned recently that's really important is you must, regardless of the results, always speak this message, because the entire universe is watching what we do. We are all connected to the entire universe. And each of us can be a beautiful ray of light if we will it, if we choose it to be. So even though, I'm speaking, even though no one hears me, I should still speak anyway, because someone could hear me. If that person hears me and is willing to listen and open his ears, Jesus said, open your ears, right? That could change the person's life trajectory forever. All right. So I've been doing this for the past 20, 30 years. And only recently have I been getting a lot of attention because, as you point out, 10 years ago, everyone would think I'm insane. But now, because of these current events, they're forced to reflect. Okay. So I see myself as a messenger. I see myself as trying to spread a message of hope. And those who can hear will hear. And those who cannot hear won't hear. But I have a responsibility, I have a duty to my children, to my 3 young children, to speak out as loudly as possible and to spread the message to build a better world. 2 words: you matter. Okay? Don't think, oh, you know what? There's 8 billion people in the world. I'm just one person, so it don't matter. Don't think, okay, you know what? We're ruled by demons. They're too powerful. They can start any wars they want. They have nuclear weapons. I should just give up. Don't think like that. Think, I do matter. Right? In Hermetic philosophy, there's something called the law of cause and effect, which means that everything is interconnected. The world, the universe is watching us. And it's all interconnected in that, if you choose to be a good person, that affects everything. Okay? It's like the butterfly effect, where just by choosing to be good, you spread good in the world. So you do matter. But you have to choose to matter, okay? You have to believe that you matter. A very important principle in the world that's very that people don't really appreciate is that of free will. Well, and it was like, oh, Professor Jiang, Mr. Jiang, you are saying so many controversial things. Aren't you afraid for your own personal safety? And the answer is like, no, I'm not afraid, because you have to let Satan in the door. You have to make a deal with the devil before he can punish you for betraying him, right? If I choose, I don't want to be involved in this material world, I just want to teach and be left alone, I don't want to seek power, I don't want to seek fame and wealth, that there's nothing the devil can do to you. You have to be tempted by the devil first and foremost, okay? And I choose to live a life of enlightenment, wisdom, and virtue. And I'm having a huge impact because of my choice. And before, I was a nobody. Before, I was just a random high school teacher in China. And there are millions of random high school teachers in China. But because I choose to exercise my free will, to speak up, because I choose to matter, I am having influence in the world. Okay? So everyone does matter. But you have to believe that you matter, and you have to fight to matter. And that really means about waking up and opening your mind to new possibilities and educating yourself. That is the future that we have to fight for.
That was Jiang Xueqin. Thank you.